When you talk about what's going to be going down tomorrow in Britain, one of the biggest fights that could be made today, I think it's second to only Tyson Fury and AJ. You're talking about a fight that makes it so special because every generation is involved and is looking forward to tomorrow's night's fight. Because what you have set tomorrow is a situation where the current era boxing fans, those of us that are, 40 and under, all know who Chris Eubank Jr. is, all know who Conor Benn is. But the thing that makes this so special and unique is that these are the sons of two all-time great British fighters, Nigel Brennan and Chris Eubank Sr. And so every generation is now going to be tuned into this fight, and that is why we have a sold-out Tottenham Hotspur arena, or stadium, I should say, being sold out for tomorrow. We're going to be having upwards of 65,000 people inside of a stadium watching tomorrow night's fight in what is expected to be incredible. That being said, though, it's time to break down what to expect tomorrow. And there's no way I could start off anything other than talking about the main event. Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn. Listen, this was a fight that was supposed to go down a couple years ago. Conor Benn had his PED issue, got suspended, was not able to find home soil for quite some time, got that all cleaned up now, and we finally get this fight booked and ready to go. But that does not mean that this did not happen without tons of controversy. Because in this build-up now, we've got ourselves into quite the situation. And I have to start off with what happened this morning. There's no other way than we discuss that. First and foremost, I'll say this. Everybody on the card made weight. And pretty normally as well. From obviously everyone from CBS and Brandon Glanton all the way up to Anthony Yarde and Lyndon Arthur. Here's what gets tricky though. The main event comes, and this is why I'm going to start with the main event. Conor Benn gets there early, right on time, hits his weight, but I will emphasize this a little bit. He weighed in at 156.4 pounds. That's 3.6 pounds under the limit. Not shocking. I don't think anybody thought he's actually going to reach the 160-pound limit because, listen, this is a guy that's fought at 147 his entire career. He's moving all the way up to 160 to make this fight happen. So him being a little bit underweight by 3.6 pounds was not shocking. Nothing wrong with that. Okay, he's good to go. However, that is still noticeable that he's going to be weighing 156.4 pounds. Not sure how much he's going to rehydrate up towards, but I can't imagine it's going to be much. I think he looked pretty fresh, looked pretty good today on the scales. That was not the case for his counterpart, the man he's going to be fighting in the ring tomorrow, in Chris Eubank Jr., who weighed in at 160.2 pounds. Then he re-weighed in at 160.05 pounds. This is why it gets really interesting. This was always going to be a situation where Chris Eubank Jr. has, yes, made 160 multiple times, as recently as just last year. But it is a tough weight class for Chris Eubank Jr. to get down to. I think his most comfortable weight class he's supposed to be fighting at is the 168 weight class. This is not no 168. And anyone that's now seen the videos come out, it was a brutal weight cut for Chris Eubank Jr. He did not look good at all. And it puts the fight a little bit in the balance of, okay, what's going to happen? There's certainly uncertainty at this point in time. Now, is that something that's good? Absolutely not. But I think the fight will go forward. But the one thing to look forward to is what happens tomorrow. Because today he was fined $500,000 for missing weight. But there's another weight clause and rehydration clause placed into this. And that is that by tomorrow morning when he wakes up and he weighs in, he cannot exceed 170 pounds. There's only a 10-pound rehydration clause set for this now. If not, that penalty will likely be in excess of about $1 million. Now listen, the purse bids between these two guys, Conor Benn and Chris Eubank Jr., were extremely high. So they're still going to be making massive amounts of money. But the fact that Chris Eubank Jr. has now been fined $500K, he's been fined $100K for the egg slaps controversy thing. He could be fined upwards to $1 million if he misses the weight cut tomorrow. This is a man that could be losing a lot of money, closing in on nearly $2 million in fines before he's even stepped foot in the ring. That's potential. So now that we have this information set in terms of the weights and what's going on there, let's preview this fight now. I've had many different people come on the show, though, over the past couple of weeks and break down this fight, but now it's time for you guys to hear my thoughts entirely on this fight. Who do I have winning to begin with? Well, the easy answer here is Chris Eubank Jr. We're going to see something similar in September when we see Bud Crawford fight Canelo Alvarez, in terms of a guy moving up multiple weight classes to go make a big mega fight happen. This is a little bit different, though, because Conor Benn, all due respect to him, is not Terrence Bud Crawford. He's not the pound-for-pound, debatably number one fighter in the world. Conor Benn's a good fighter, but he's not that. But at the very same time, Chris Eubank Jr. is not Canelo Alvarez. So There is a little bit of a similarity you can see between the two of them. But now that we look at the weight issue, this was always going to be the primary emphasis of this fight. And I say this because when you talk about the weight advantages, weight classes for a reason, Chris Eubank Jr. was always going to be the favorite. When you talk about having the advantage on a height, reach, and weight scale, that's going to be a difficult opposition guy to go out there and fight against. But that's the situation Chris Eubank Jr. is in. However, seeing how difficult this weight cut was for him, I don't think Chris Eubank Jr. is going to be anywhere near 100% or maybe even 90 or 85 or maybe even 80% of himself tomorrow. While his opposition will be at 100% of the potential Conor Benn he could be at tomorrow. And what I expect is, listen, Chris Eubank Jr. has only lost 3 fights his entire career. He's 34-3, 25 KOs, while Conor Benn 23-0. Conor Benn, though, has not looked exceptionally sharp in his previous couple of fights. He's been very, very inactive due to the suspension of PEDs and then fighting guys that are not very good. Let's just be honest and say it blunt right there. Conor Benn has not been fighting these guys that are elite fighters over the past couple of years, and those guys that he has stepped in the ring with are not guys that you would consider elite opposition. So that was always a sense of questioning that I would have towards this fight. While Chris Eubank Jr. has had a great performance just last year and looked very, very sharp. However, as I keep going back to, the biggest thing I want to look at is the weight. If Chris Eubank Jr. is at full strength, or at least at a high level of who he can possibly be, I see Chris Eubank Jr. being a guy that can easily go out there and should be able to defeat Conor Benn with ease. But I do raise a lot of skepticism in regards to whether or not he is ready physically to take on Conor Benn. Because what I expect to see happen tomorrow is that Conor Benn knows this. He cannot fight at a distance. He's going to have to be pressured in, up close, and fighting Chris Eubank in the pocket. That's his way to victory. He's going to have to utilize his power, get in tight and close the gap, close the space, balance all that, and get in. While Chris Eubank Jr. is going to have to utilize his leverage, his height, his length, and be able to create distance on Conor Benn. That's the way this fight's going to have to go. If Conor Benn has the energy, which I think he will have, by getting inward and getting into the pocket against Chris Eubank Jr., we could see a massive, massive upset tomorrow night. That's what we could very likely have come to fruition. Because if Chris Eubank Jr. does not have the energy from his body to be able to produce at the level and create the distance, create the space that we think he can do if he's 100%, this could be a problem. And you have to remember, there's another side point I mentioned yesterday that came out. This ring tomorrow will be smaller than typical. Very often in boxing, you will see rings that are roughly between 20 and 24 by 20 and 24, or 20 and 20 by or 20 by 20, or 24 by 24. Somewhere in that range is typically where you see professional boxing fights take place at in terms of the ring size. This fight card will all be taking place on an 18 by 18 ring. You might ask, why is this the decision that they decided to go with? Well, this is the typical ring style you're going to see take place in a place like Mexico. Oftentimes you see it sometimes in Japan as well, but primarily Mexico likes to utilize the smaller rings. What happens in a smaller ring is that you force guys to now have to go and be tight. There's not going to be a lot of dancing around. There's not a lot of extra space to move around. You're going to be forced to be pretty much close, toe-to-toe with each other. Now, there is some space, obviously, but much, much shorter than other rings you're going to go into. This will be more impactful, I believe, in other fight cards I'm going to go break down momentarily. However, this still helps Conor Benn a ton. Because Conor Benn is going into a situation where now Chris Eubank Jr. is going to be even in a more difficult position to create the distance that he needs to be able to pull off this win on Conor Benn. So that's something to definitely keep an eye on. Now, going back into this fight, my final prediction, yes. I really was set. I had Chris Eubank Jr. as the guy I was picking as of last night when I created these notes. And I've been going back and forth ever since this point. Because the weight I really look at the weight, and he did not look good at all. That video of him trying to weight cut and cut that font, because listen, when he moved in there at 160.2, and then he comes back and he still is 0.05 pounds off from the weight, that did not look good. He looked very, very bad. And the fact that he's not going to be able to replenish his body fully, only has 10 pounds to possibly gain back, he's going to be a fraction of himself tomorrow. That concerns me in terms of this. So I will say this. Does Chris Eubank Jr. have the advantage tomorrow night? Absolutely. But did my odds for Conor Benn drastically skyrocket over the past 12 to 18 hours? Without a shadow of a doubt. Where I'm I'm honestly confident and comfortable saying that I would not be shocked if we see Conor Benn emerge tomorrow with a victory. If I were to put money down on it, I think I would still pick Chris Eubank Jr. But if I continue this trend and if he does not make weight tomorrow at 170 and there's a struggle there, I'm probably going to favor myself to go with Conor Benn. As shocking as that is to say, that is what I feel like could possibly happen. Because you have to think of one other aspect here. When I look at this fight, Chris Eubank Jr. is the older man. He is not the same fighter he once was. And you could say that about Conor Benn as well. But for Conor Benn, he's still younger than Chris Eubank Jr. He hasn't gone through everything that Chris Eubank Jr. has gone through. And when you look at the negotiations for this fight, there was two big emphasis that Chris Eubank wanted. Chris Eubank Jr. wanted to make sure that he had the money, the finances, and the A side. That's what Chris Eubank Jr. He wanted money. He wanted to cash out. Conor Benn's mindset was a little bit different than that. If anybody looks at the details of this negotiation process, Conor Benn essentially said, I will do whatever it takes to get in this fight, make it happen. However, I'm going there to win. Being the A side does not matter to Conor Benn, nor does the financial gain as much so as it does for Chris Eubank Jr. But Conor Benn wanted to make sure it was a smaller ring, got that done. Conor Benn also wanted to make sure there's a rehydration clause in there. He wanted to make this fight as winnable as possible for himself because I think his mindset is 100% on realizing, listen, there's a legacy involved here, and I have a chance to go out there and shock the world and make a big, big win statement tomorrow night. But here's another thing I want to throw out there for everybody. When it comes to Conor Benn, he has the greatest chance of being the winner of the night. What do I mean by this? Obviously, if he wins, he wins. Yes, obviously. I just said that's possible. But if Conor Benn goes out tomorrow night and puts on a great show, makes it a very, very competitive fight, and challenges Chris Eubank Jr., who is a guy that a lot of people see could have had a title shot at 160, 168. If he challenges this guy 2 weight classes up for himself, this opens the door to an entirely new world of opportunities for Conor Benn. I don't know if he's going to be able to go back down to 147. But if he does, what's to say that he couldn't go have a mega fight with Jerome Boots Ennis? Unify with a guy or go up against a guy like Brian Norman or Mario Barrios, or 154 challenging a guy. I don't think it's going to happen, but let's just say the champions for while we're at it. You have a guy in Bakar Murtavaliev, Bud Crawford, Sebastian Fundora. Virgil Ortiz would be a big fight. And if he can challenge so much so of a guy like Chris Eubank Jr., what's to say he can't get in the mix of a guy against like a guy like Laura, Janabek, or Adames? 160, I don't think he's going to go up there. Obviously not. But when you look at the 3 weight classes that he hypothetically could reach, this could get very, very interesting for what Conor Benn can reach tomorrow night. Because as long as Conor Benn goes out there and has a good performance, there's no reason that Conor Benn can't emerge from this overall, when you look at the grand scheme of his career, victorious because of the opportunities it presents. For Chris Eubank Jr., he wins financially. He is getting a massive bag. Now, he's losing a lot of that, but he's still getting a massive bag, and he's on the tail end of his career. Chris Eubank Jr. wins tomorrow. It's a great thing. It's a great night for boxing. It's awesome to see him have that. But him beating up a guy, everyone's always going to go out there and say, hey, you defeated a guy that is lower weights than you. But the biggest guy with the opportunity to win tomorrow night is Conor Benn. So that's something to keep an eye on in terms of that fight. Because this will be a massive main event. The place will be rocking, and that's what we have to look forward to for that fight. Let's head over to the co-main event now, all right? Anthony Yarde versus Lyndon Arthur III. Okay, I get it, everybody. Nobody really, really wanted this trilogy to occur, but we are in a position now where, guess what? A trilogy is going to occur. Lyndon Arthur, Anthony Yarde are going to go at it. Let's look at the trilogy history real quick. Let me set the landscape for you guys. 2020, they had the very first fight. Arthur wins that fight by decision. We run it back to 2021, 1 year later. Anthony Yarde avenges this loss with a dominating KO of Lyndon Arthur, and that's in the 2021 fight. We're now in 2025, and we're going to run the trilogy back. That's a long, long gap between the fights. Nobody was really... listen, I think there's 2 parts. Let me just be honest with this. This is a fight that I do not mind. There's a lot of hate because a lot of people say, why do we want this fight? It doesn't need to happen. And I agree with that. I see that side. But it's still not a fight I'm going to sit up here and bash and complain about. Do I think Anthony Yarde's going to win this fight? Sure. But it's still a fine fight to be made. Let me just clarify that real quickly. Here's what we have set for the table, though. When we talk about career outlooks between these 2 guys, Anthony Yarde is in a position where his career is nowhere near over yet. Anthony Yarde still has his eyes set on possibly going for, well, let's be honest, a world championship appearance. Now, light heavyweight is stacked. We know Bivol Beterbiev are going to go at it for 3 of the belts coming up probably in the fall of this year. We have David Benavidez in there. I think he's going to get Callum Smith in that next fight. So there's still a lot to be set for the tables in terms of what could happen in this fight. But Anthony Yarde needs this win. If Anthony Yarde does not come out with a victory over Lyndon Arthur, his career is going to be really in the balance of what the heck does he do next. He needs this win. As for Lyndon Arthur, this is more closure for his career. When you look at Lyndon Arthur, he's had a good boxing career. And if he gets the finishing touches of winning the trilogy on Anthony Yarde, that would be huge for him. It might even set him up for a position where he says, you know what, I can step away from boxing going forward now, if that is what he wants. This is the type of fight you can walk away, because Lyndon Arthur is not going to go beat Bivol or Beterbiev or Benavidez. I feel like this is probably the best opponent that he could possibly fight where a victory could be sensible, if that makes sense. I don't see it being a guaranteed victory. Like I said, I favor Anthony Yarde in this one, but I see that this could probably be the most realistic, high-ranking opponent that he could fight and possibly get a win on. So could this be the final time we see him in the ring with a victory on a big stage? Very possible. Let's break down what you're going to look for in this fight now. As for Anthony Yarde, he is the much more physical, stronger, and explosive fighter. His goal is to get inside and go for the KO. He did that in 2021. That's what he has to go after and pursue again tomorrow night. That has to be the option on the table. He's not going to win a boxing fight. He's not going to win with technique. He's not going to win by controlling distance and all those things. He needs to get uptight, get the KO, and go for the kill. That's simple. He's done it in 2021. Just rinse and repeat. Do the same exact thing again in 2025. He's going to get out of there with probably I'd say under 7 rounds. I think we're going to see a KO by Anthony Yarde. That's my prediction on that fight. As for Lyndon Arthur, he is the better overall boxer in this fight. He's going to have to control the distance, rely on his jab, and fundamentals to overpass and surpass Anthony Yarde in this fight if he's going to do so. My biggest question is, will he be able to do that for 12 rounds or 10 rounds in this fight? I don't think so. I think age is caught up to him. He's a good fighter, but I don't think he's going to be able to go past and get past Anthony Yarde in this fight. It's going to be interesting to see what happens, but that's what I do expect to see happening. As I said, I think Anthony Yarde will emerge from this fight victorious. I think Anthony Yarde will be the man that is going to get a KO within 7 rounds. And I believe that Anthony Yarde will end up eventually winning this trilogy 2-1 in the series, move forward, and set himself up to get a very interesting fight. Could it be against Callum Smith? Could he get past Callum Smith and maybe go force his way into an opportunity against David Benavidez? All those opportunities are on the table. Maybe even be a guy that challenges Bivol or Beterbiev winner, although I think that's almost guaranteed to be a Benavidez fight for whoever wins that fight. So we'll see what happens there. But Anthony Yarde gets a big victory, a statement win tomorrow night. It elevates his stock. It elevates his name, his image, and does set himself up for a big fight in what would ever come next later this year or early 2026. So that's my prediction for the co-main event. Let's head into the next fight that's going to be on the card. Billam-Smith versus Aaron McKenna. I really, really like this fight. It might be too far to say it's my favorite fight on the card, but I'm very, very intrigued by this fight. Let me give you guys the breakdown and see what happens in this upcoming fight, because I just want to set the table for you guys before I give my prediction on this one. As for Billam-Smith, he heads into this fight 33-4-1, 20 KOs. He's going to be facing the unbeaten Irish prospect in Aaron McKenna, 19-0, 10 KOs. Listen, a lot of people, diehard boxing fans know who Aaron McKenna is. I like what he brings to the table. I think he's a very, very good fighter, a young fighter. Billam-Smith is the veteran. We have a very, very big age gap between these two guys. Billam-Smith has accomplished a lot in the sport. He's done an incredible work throughout his career. Well, Aaron McKenna is this guy that tomorrow night, we could be talking about him. And when I do Back Up Live again on Monday, I could be talking about him as being one of the top up-and-coming, at that point now established rising stars in boxing. I really do like what he brings to this table. So, for Billam-Smith, just give more details on him. Obviously, he's a former WBO light middleweight champion. He's fought Canelo Alvarez. He's fought Chris Eubank Jr. This guy has experience. Sometimes experience can overcome youth, can overcome agility, can overcome athleticism, and so on and so forth. He's been in the ring. He knows what big fights are like. This will not be a shell-shocking experience for Billam-Smith tomorrow. That will be the case for Aaron McKenna. This will be the biggest stage he's going to fight on. Listen, 65,000 plus people. It doesn't get much bigger than this. So, Aaron McKenna, though, he's only 25 years old. He's a rangy middleweight. He has strong amateur pedigree, and this will be his toughest fight of his career. Obviously, when you just look at that factor right there, yes, there's a lot on the table for him. There's a big gap between experience and non-experience. At the same time, I said I'm very, very high on Aaron McKenna. Here's what we're going to have to look for in this fight now. For Billam-Smith, He has not fought since his Chris Eubank Jr. stoppage. He's coming off of a very, very long break, and he's 36 years old at this point in time. That is a pretty significant, notable fact right there. When you talk about experience, he has that. But when you're looking at a fight where you do not have consistency in the ring for this amount of time, and you are at this age and you're fighting a guy that has been pretty active overall, has 10 KOs, 19 wins, is a young fighter, Aaron McKenna does have the advantage when you look at it from that standpoint. And that's what I'm really looking forward to seeing, because the biggest thing for these two guys is Aaron McKenna, can he situate himself when he has all the eyes on him, when he has all the pressure on him? Can he put himself in a position to still focus in and not be drawn away and unfocused by the attention being brought upon him in that fight? Lyndon-Smith, yes, he has experience, but he's not going to be in a position where he is going to feel comfortable. There's going to have to be some form of rust on him. It is what it is. I'm going to be favoring the youth in a little bit in this one. I think that McKenna is going to have big moments in this fight. The only thing I do also question is I know he doesn't have great KO power, but I said, when I look at Lyndon-Smith, he's not been in the ring since the Chris Eubank Jr. stoppage. He's 36 years old at this point in time. It's going to be a lot of different things you're going to have to look at where Aaron McKenna is coming in here fresh. And I would not be shocked when I go back live on Monday to come out here and say, listen, Aaron McKenna has established himself as a legitimate middleweight now. This is the guy for everybody to keep their eyes on. He is going to be in position now to challenge himself for either a title eliminator or maybe even a title fight. I might be very, very wrong here. Like I said, it comes down to the fact if he is not ready for the big moment, this big spotlight, this could be an easy win for Lyndon-Smith, because at that point in time, the experience, what he's already been accustomed to is going to be huge for him. So don't get me wrong. I feel this one is a very, very, almost a 50-50 fight. Depends on the two different scenarios and what's going to happen in this fight. But I do see a chance where Lyndon-Smith, of course, wins this fight. But if I were to put money on it right now, I would favor Aaron McKenna in this fight. I like what he brings here. I think he's going to have some good moments in this fight. And I would not be shocked, like I said, come Monday, for me to be talking about the next rising star in the middleweight division. Two more fights to get into now on this big card tomorrow. I guess on the eve of tomorrow now. I know it depends on where you're listening from. But for me right now, it's afternoon time in Arizona. So let's head over now to what's going to be happening in this next fight I want to preview. Chris Billam-Smith, Brandon Glanton. Okay, listen, let me just say this right now. This is going to probably be, has a chance to be, the most entertaining fight of the card tomorrow. I talked about in the very beginning when I mentioned the Chris Eubank Jr. Conor Benn card that the ring is going to be 18 by 18 feet. And I said that some fights are going to be factored more, that's going to impact more fights than others. This is what I was referring to. You're going to have two cruiserweights. Now, neither one of these cruiserweights are guys that you're going to look at and say, okay, these are pound for pound type fighters. The likes of a Jai Opetaia and those type of guys, right? Guys that can move around, are still powerful. These are two guys that's going to go in that ring, and it's going to be a slugfest. That's the way it's going to go down. Anybody that watched CBS fight against Zurdo a few months ago, people saw that. CBS fights with incredible heart. This man does not back down. When we recall that Zurdo fight, and if anyone hasn't seen it, I'd encourage you to go see clips of it. Zurdo beat him down the entire fight, yes. But when you talk about the way that CBS stood up that entire fight, he was taking a brutal punishment, and he just kept going and kept going and kept going. And listen, I think Zurdo and Jai Opetaia are far up and above everybody else in the cruiserweight division. This is nothing against CBS. He's a very, very good fighter, and as is Brandon Glanton. And when you talk about putting these two big guys going to be slugging it out, I don't think even if you had 24 by 24 foot rings, I think these two guys would go out there and thug it out for the entire fight duration of that fight, however long it lasts. But when you talk about putting them in an 18 by 18 ring, oh my goodness. These two guys are going to put on a show tomorrow. Is it going to be the best high-level boxing? Probably not. But for those of you that just want to see high action, big-time fights, big-time punches, this is the fight to go see. So let me break down and set the table for what to expect in this fight. You have the WBO Cruiserweight Champion, Chris Billam-Smith, former one, I should say, 22-13 KOs. He's obviously coming off his loss to Jai Opetaia. And as for the American, Brandon Glanton, he's 22-17 KOs. This will be a 10-round fight. Now, for those of you that do not know CBS, I'm going to give you guys a little bit more breakdown. He's a very respected British fighter. He's durable, and he's going to be rebounding from his loss of his belt to Zurdo. As for Glanton, he's a very, very aggressive knockout artist. He is a great stout bound, and he has a lot of KOs. Both of these guys, like I said, are going to be swinging for the fences. They're going to be going after it, attacking each other, thugging it out is pretty much the best way to put it. There's not going to be this is going to be a lot of punches landed. There's going to be a lot of punches hit, and it's going to be a very, very good fight in my opinion right there. So let me give you guys my thoughts on what's going to happen here. When we break down this fight, I'll make a prediction here. I'm American, but I don't have to go with the man from Britain and CBS. I just talked about this. Listen, Zurdo and Jaya Pataya are leaps and bounds better than everybody else in the cruiserweight division. These are two guys that I believe, and I think Jaya Pataya is the best in the division, but I think that both of these two guys are fighters that we could see even possibly do something at the heavyweight division if they so want to in the future. Not going to go too far in that expression there, but that's the point I'm trying to make. That these guys are extremely talented. So that when we look at what CBS did against Jaya Pataya or against Zurdo, that's not really something that I'm going to look at and hold him against. I think that CBS is still an excellent fighter. I think he's a world champion type caliber fighter. And that's what we're going to see come to fruition tomorrow. That CBS is amongst, if not the best guy in that next tier right underneath the two main guys I just listed. I think it's going to be a great fight. I think it has a chance to go to decision because now the guy's going to back down. They're going to be swinging at each other the entire fight. And so I think this fight will go to decision. I think CBS will win it on points. Here's what's going to have to happen, though, for that to come to fruition. CBS is fighting on his home soil, so that's going to be huge for himself. But he's going to have to be a guy that uses his jab. He's going to have to be a guy that utilizes endurance. We saw the great endurance that he had against Zurdo. If he brings that same level of endurance to this fight against Glanton, it's going to be a great, great performance for himself. As for Glanton, he is a guy that wants to go put the pressure moving forward on his opponents. He's going to be looking for going for the KO. That's the way he rolls. I think that CBS is going to be able to eat those shots when he has to take them. I think CBS is going to be utilize his jab better so than Glanton. I think that it's going to favor him. Listen, once again, 65,000 plus fans will be in attendance tomorrow. Now, will it be a full 65,000 at the time of this fight? I'm not sure. But that home soil victory is going to give him a little bit of an edge. I think this is a very pretty much an even fight. But I think that the small details of factors, the experience that CBS has over Glanton, also the fact of him being on his home soil is going to push the pressure on Glanton and will eventually give CBS the win on points tomorrow. A KO is possible. If a KO does occur, I would expect it to come from Glanton. However, CBS obviously has a shot at that as well, but this will be an intriguing fight to say nonetheless, but I do have CBS winning that fight. Opening up the night tomorrow at it's going to be 9 a.m. my time. I believe it's going to be 5 o'clock British Standard Time. We have this fight. Viddal Riley, Cheavon, Clarke. This will be for the British Cruiserweight title. Once again, at the Cruiserweight division, the 18x18 ring is going to be huge for these guys. It's going to create a high action pace, and I think it's going to very much so favor Clarke. That's my opponent there. I think that Clarke likes to be the guy that puts the pressure going forward, and I think that we're going to see this favor Clarke a lot by being an 18x18. But let's set the table for you guys real quickly. For Riley, he is 12-0 in his career with 7 KOs. For C4 Clarke, he is 10-1, 7 KOs. This is for the vacant British Cruiserweight Championship. Now, the backstory behind this. For Riley, he is a guy that has quite the story if you do not know. He's a social media star that turned into a legitimate contender. He has quite the story there. We've seen, obviously, this whole social media barrage of these guys that were celebrities move up into boxing and have their careers. We know some of the names coming to mind. I'm not going to list them right now because it's time to focus on these guys. As for Clarke, he's a former Great British Olympian, strong amateur background. Both are solid fighters and have put themselves in position to be along on this card. For Riley, he is a slick southpaw. He's a disciplined boxer, and he has great fundamentals. He's going to utilize a jab, and he's also going to make sure he utilizes counters. He's also a great fighter overall. Let's move to Clarke now for what he's going to bring to the table. He's a very stocky and aggressive fighter. He's got great, great power. And a lot of his KOs have always come within 4 rounds. He is a guy that's going to be looking for the KO. That is why I said that for Clarke, being in a 18x18 ring will favor him going into this fight. He wants the KOs. He wants the KOs early. That's what he's going to be looking to put his pressure on. Not saying it's going to be the end result here, but the 18x18 ring is a factor to notice in this fight for people that are looking at it. When you talk about what Riley's bringing to the table, he is a good fighter as well, but he has not quite been in experienced fights as much so as we have seen with Clarke. So what do I think is going to happen here? Well, Riley does hold his youth at his advantage. He's 27 years old, while Clarke is 34 years old. Viddal Riley is favored to win this fight by a lot of people. However, what I'm going to say is this. This will come down to the round-by-round basis for this fight. What's going to have to happen is that for Riley, if this fight goes beyond goes to the second, 3/4 or beyond, so let's say 6th or 7th round are on, I think it's going to favor Riley. Riley will then win that fight. But Clarke is going to have to come out being the older guy, swinging and going for the KO like he typically does anyways. He wants that 4th round KO or under to occur on his resume. That is what I would favor. If it happens within 4 rounds, it's going to be Clarke by KO. If we're looking at it from Riley's standpoint, he needs to survive that early burst, get Clarke a little bit phased, a little bit tired, and let him progress to the standpoint where, okay, you can take advantage of the guy being older than you. You can take advantage of that component. You can outbox him, then utilize your distance, utilize your skills that you have brought to your table, and the youth that you have. If that's what occurs, Riley will come out by victory. If we're going to go by resume, if I'm going to bet on this fight, my bet is that I'm going to go with Clarke. I think Clarke is more experienced, and I think that being in an 18-by-18 ring will factor this fight more so than any other fight on this card. Because of the fact that Clarke wants the distance closed, Clarke wants to go get the KO early, and that is what he's been accustomed to throughout his career. He also knows these type of atmospheres, not to this extent, but he knows how to fight in these big scenarios. And I think that we're going to see a good victory from Clarke come tomorrow to open up the card. And I think it will be in KO fashion, under 5 rounds in this fight. So that's what I have for you guys, breaking down this 5-fight card going down tomorrow. Listen, just to give the hype, this is a card that should excite everybody. If you're in Britain, if you're in Europe specifically, this fight is huge. For those of us in America, unless you're a diehard boxing fan, I don't think you understand the gravity of how significant this fight is. I explained in the intro to the show. Every generation gets involved in this fight. From top to bottom, you have the older generation, you have the middle generation, you have the young guys. Everybody can relate to this fight, and especially the main event, in some way, shape, or form. And that is evident throughout all of Britain, and specifically the UK, and then we go even to Europe, let's say that. But for Americans, listen, there is good fights on this card. This is going to be 5 fights tomorrow of good high-level boxing that you're not going to get anywhere else. This will be a fight card to watch. I'm, of course, going to be up covering this fight. Right at 9 a.m. my time, we'll be covering this fight. And then on Monday, I will go on this live, and I'm going to break down everything I saw from this fight, my reaction to every single fight, let you guys know what happens. But for that is what I got for you guys in store for this breakdown.